tonight, I don't want to steal his thunder, but he's going to talk to you about Puerto Rico and how, as energy professionals, we can help in a meaningful way with that recovery. And how that's relevant to our theme tonight is that, unfortunately, as all the experts have predicted, this is not going to be our last season of devastating storms that wipe out power for millions of people for days and weeks at a time. And Mark is here to address that very real challenge.
And you can groan, it's the same guy all over again. No, this is, maybe it's opportunistic, but I think it feels compelling to take that opportunity right now. And I did have a whole presentation that I'd love to give sometime about electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles, all that fun stuff. But right now, we have a crisis brewing. You know, the hurricane just roared through the Caribbean and totally devastated Puerto Rico. Sadly, we're looking at a situation where we're going to have more of these storms. They're getting more severe. You know, no matter how fast we try to catch global warming, we're going to have a warming ocean and more energy in these hurricanes. And, you know, we're going to have to sort of figure out how to respond to these things on an ongoing basis. Unfortunately, when these giant storms whack an island, we're talking about disasters at, you know, wind speeds that are amazing, flooding that comes in and destroys, that nothing can survive, and you know, 52 inches of rain and things like that are just unbelievable. So nothing can survive that. Certainly not residential and commercial kinds of buildings. So we have truly a disaster going on, where people have no water, they have no food, they have no shelter. They're in big trouble. They're trying to salvage what they can to start rebuilding. They've got a giant cleanup job to do. I think people are responding too slowly. On top of that, when this comes through, it whacks the grid and knocks down the grid. They're now talking about the grid being out for 6 months. If without refrigeration, without water, they can't even get ATMs to work without power. Of course, you can't pump at a gas station without power. You can't refrigerate medicines. You can't keep these ICU rooms and emergency rooms running without power. People have already died because they ran out of diesel for the backup generator. That is inexcusable. We can't solve all those problems, but maybe we can have some sympathy for some of these people and think about ways where we can help. In particular, you know, I mean, we can't sort of, I don't know how to help other than give money with the short-term crisis of, you know, airlifting in water and fuel jugs. But longer term and sort of quickly, they need to start putting buildings back up, re-roofing them. There's no infrastructure of building materials in these islands. They import everything from the mainland. They have to get the electricity up somehow. They need sources of electricity. Now, I don't know if the best, I'm an ex-nuclear submarine guy. Let me tell you, you pull a submarine up alongside the harbor and plug it in, you can run the whole island off of that. And it's a big nuclear plant. So, you know, they'll figure out ways to get that new hospital. You know, the hospital ship comes in, it doesn't only function as a hospital, it functions as a giant generator. So they'll get some things happening, but then we need to figure out how to help. And they really need, on top of all that, as part of the reconstruction, they need jobs and they need money. If, well, I think we have to assume tourism is dead. Who's going to go there for tourism for the next few years? That whacks the economy again. So I was visiting a solar company in the area recently. Just a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine said, hey, there's this cool there's a cool solar company that's really doing solar roofing. Could you come help them raise money? So I'm looking at that, and then right in the midst of those conversations, all this stuff happened in Puerto Rico. So it caused me to think about this maybe as a proposal that we could at least collectively think about. Merlin Solar, I don't know how many of you know about Merlin. You know, it's one of many solar companies in the valley, but they've figured out how to, one, make solar cells cheaper, but they've especially focused on making them rugged for torsion and twisting and hail and sort of physical robustness. And that allows them to use them in wind buffeting and rugged environments. They literally put them on the tops of RVs and the front air dam of trucks and generate power for those kinds of rugged applications. But they're also in roofing. They make the technology stuff. The technology stuff is here in Sunnyvale or wherever, locally. And then they have a roofing plant in the Philippines and another one in India to crank out, as you'll see, solar roofing. So when you slap down this big galvanized panel, it's got the solar pre-installed, and it's all rugged enough to survive that kind of handling and that kind of manipulation. It's all pre-wired. They just plug it in and go. And from an island standpoint, all you need to import is rolls of sheet metal, and they go through a machine and come out with the standing seam metal roofing, and then you laminate the solar on, and you've got solar cells that isn't quite the same design picture, but you get the idea. It's very easy to then make pretty rugged metal roofs that have integrated solar. They need those kinds of, they need the factory jobs, they need the field jobs, they need the materials, and they need the electricity that comes from a solar roof. So it, in some ways, maybe helps solve a few of the problems they've got. Of course, most solar systems and most arrangements are geared to be grid connected, and that's where they get their timing signals, and everything has to work that way. This is a case where the grid is down. So we're thinking about off-grid, islanded stuff, a little bit different way, and it needs to have, obviously, some kind of battery backup, because if you're trying to store medicines or do other reliable things, you need to have some kind of backup to provide that. Of course, there's now, fortunately, an evolving group of mostly the automotive players, with others as well, who are working on energy storage at all different sizes of scale. A lot of these are going to be using eventually second-use batteries when they come out of electric vehicles. They go in and they get used for second use, whether it's behind the meter storage or garage storage or things like that. Here's a perfect application for a lot of battery packs. So short term, Merlin's spinning up an effort to try to ship a shipload of stuff out of their India factory so it lands in Puerto Rico as fast as possible. And they can, some buildings are actually, the walls are still there, they got to dry them out, but the roofs have been ripped off. So very quickly we got to get some stuff just covered up. And then they need to get the money to put together a factory there. They need to get people in who can be design managers, construction managers, and get this thing rolling. A real opportunity for somebody, if you're between a gig or you're retired, go to Puerto Rico and help out. But the other, I think, big opportunity that people here might think about is, as much as we think of Puerto Rico as a tourist town, the reality is they had a huge incentive program over the last several decades to incentivize pharmaceutical and medtech companies to come there. And there are dozens of them with large amount of, roughly a third of the pharmaceuticals that the United States produces are produced in Puerto Rico. So whether it's Abbott or Amgen or Becton Dickinson or all of these guys, they're in Puerto Rico. They're already donating big money to help their employees get most of their buildings are still okay. Most of them had pretty rugged buildings pretty highly located. Most of them have generator backup. They've got backup refrigeration. They're not losing products, so you'll be able to get your medicines. But their employees are screwed. And so they're actively trying to figure out how to help those employees. Somebody needs to go around literally and collect $2 million from each of these guys to set up a building materials company and get going on helping them reconstruct. So that's my story. I'll stand by it. I would love to figure out how to help. And to be honest, I don't know how. This is just one idea thrown in the wind. Thanks.